Ready? We're on Q. Guess who got Q for lack of Bible character? Me. So guess what I did? I cheated just a little bit. Well, what Q do we have? But I know I looked for Q's and I said, okay, it's got to be Queen. So Queen Esther. This one was hard though because we had to pick, for our lack of Bible character, we pick people who are generally good people who did something wrong or who messed up. So it's not just finding Queen Jezebel because she was a bad guy. So we can't use that. So we have to find a good guy who did something wrong. This one was a little hard for me. I put lack of Bible character ? Lack of Bible, because normally when we talk about Queen Esther, and it's funny because Tony and I have a very different view, or we've had a very different view on Queen Esther. And he was kind of right. But she grew into me being right. She started off with him being right, I think. So I think we kind of agree now on Queen Esther. But we've had, every time I talk about Queen Esther, he rolls his eyes and says, she was a whatever. I know, he rolls his eyes because he doesn't see her as a godly, heroic woman, virtuous woman. Heroic, but not virtuous. Not as virtuous, he said, as people seem to give her credit for. So it's a little hard to understand Esther without understanding the story behind Esther. So we're going to quickly go, just for those of you who don't know who Queen Esther is. It's interesting, the book of Esther, you can go to the next slide if you want, but the book of Esther, this is an interesting little tidbit. I won't charge you extra for this, or maybe a little extra. Maybe a little extra. If I got $1 a piece out of you, I'd be like $50. It's the only book in the Bible, the entire Bible. You always know all the answers. Teacher's pet. It's the only book in the Bible that what? Doesn't mention God. It's the only book in the Old Testament or the New Testament that doesn't mention God, not once. And I actually read something else, and this one, go ahead. Where it's kind of like hidden behind the scenes, or so it's not Yahweh as a word, it's the beginning, the end of one sentence and the beginning of another, it ends up making Yahweh? Yes, Tim. Esther is an angel compared to Jezebel. Can we all agree that Esther was an angel compared to Jezebel? Do you concur? You concur. It's the other word that's never mentioned in the book of Esther. I'd never heard this before. Prayer. Prayer is never mentioned in the book of Esther. Now, it does say that she had people, and we'll go through this, but she had people fast for 3 days. It just doesn't say pray. It doesn't allude to the fact that she ever prayed or the proposition that she ever prayed or that other people prayed for her. So the word God and prayer aren't in the book of Esther at all, which is really pretty fascinating. Okay, Esther. Esther was a Jewish orphan. Her parents died, and she was raised by Mordecai, which was her older cousin. Some people say uncle, but it was her older cousin. It was her uncle's son, Mordecai. They were in Persia, which is modern day, do you remember? Modern day Iran. And it was from Jerusalem's exile. Mordecai's great-great-grandpa was in Israel and was exiled out. Remember when the Babylonians, God said, I'm going to send the Babylonians in, and they're going to keep you captive, take you captive for 70 years. After 70 years, he said, I'm going to let you free so that you can return to your land. So they were in Persia for that reason. King Xerxes was the king of Persia during that time, and Queen Vashti was his queen. I always saw, we'll talk about this, I always saw Queen Vashti as kind of this uppity, proud woman, and Esther as the hero. Now I kind of have more respect for Queen Vashti. If you remember, King Xerxes threw this wild party. I mean, wild, lasting weeks, if not months. I think it was months long. He was drunker than a skunk. It said he was high in spirits from wine. So those of you who think wine is okay, be careful, be very, very careful. He was high in spirits from wine, and he basically wanted to show off how nice his wife looked. So he said, put on your royal crown and come out and let my friends see how beautiful you look, which is how I've always read it. And I thought, well, okay, maybe, don't you laugh, don't you snicker, maybe in poor taste, but he just wanted to show off that he had a smoking hot wife. Okay, whatever. she's his wife. Go out and say, honey, you've had a few too many, but hello, here I am. I'm the queen. Bless you, bless you, bless you, whatever she says, and goes back to her room. But if you read the text, oh, and by the way, in your study guide, I put a lot of the pertinent texts on the left and the right-hand side. So I'm not going to be reading these passages specifically, or most of them I won't be, but I will be alluding to them. So if you go home and you say, where does it say that? Or if I'm trying to see where it says that, it's going to be on your left-hand side. The right-hand side is what we're going to see in our on our keynote slides. But King Xerxes was high in spirits from wine, and he summoned his wife out. It says in her royal, not in her royal robe or in her royal dress, but in her royal crown. So most people believe that she was naked as a skunk. Is that the right phrase? Naked? No, that's drunk as a skunk. He was drunk as a skunk, and she was naked as a jaybird. That she was naked, and he said, I want to show my friends how smoking hot you are. Come out just in your royal crown. That's what it looks like. I mean, it doesn't specifically say she was naked, but it did say that he summoned her out to be wearing her royal crown. Hello. She refused to go out, and he said, oh my goodness, what do I do now? To all of his trusted advisors, and his advisor says, oh, you better get rid of her, because then all of our wives are going to start getting uppity like she is, and you better kick her out. So he banished her. He got rid of her. That's what you have to do with an uppity wife. But I always saw her as just kind of, a little, dominant, but a little maybe too dominant to be the queen. But now I understand. Anyway, so he gets rid of Queen Vashti. So then he's all by himself. Well, no king can be all by himself. So all of his advisors said, we should send your servants through the streets of Persia and find a beautiful young woman for you. And so the servants went out and collected all the young ladies. It doesn't say how they collected them, whether they said, hey, do you want to be one of the king's wives, or do you want to be in the king's harem, or do you want to be, or if they just grabbed the people. We don't know exactly what happened, but they went out on the streets and got all of these young ladies and basically put these young ladies through a 12-month beauty treatment series. A year of beauty. What can you do? Yeah, maybe they're just really ugly. What can you do? I don't even know. Put all of them through 1 year of beauty treatments. And then the king would summon one of the girls to him and play cards. Tony said, and ask questions. He would ask one of the girls to come in to him. It doesn't say what he asked them to do. It just says that the girl would go to his residence, in his room, in the evening, and leave in the morning. Not exactly an American. Well, some people think it was kind of an American Idol audition. But again, so we're kind of reading between the lines. It doesn't say that Esther necessarily did anything immoral with the king, but she went to his bedroom at night and left in the morning, and she pleased him most of all. He was wow! This story is like a soap opera. This story, it's really quite fascinating. So because she pleased him most of all, I'm sure because of her wit and charm, Esther was chosen as the new queen. Okay, the soap opera continues. Haman comes into the picture. Haman, now by the way, I won't charge you extra for this one either. 2 for 1 special tonight. Haman was a descendant of the Amalekites. If you remember King Saul, King Saul was the first king. King Saul went to war against the Amalekites, and God said, kill every single one of them. And we never understand. We say, oh, what about the kids? Kill them all. Kill the kids, kill the cattle, kill everything. Wipe them out. They're going to be a thorn in your flesh if you don't. Just wipe them out. King Saul saved King Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and all the best cattle and all the rich stuff for his men. That's when God rejected Saul as king. God said, you know what? He just does not pay attention, that boy. Get him out and get David, a man after my own heart, in his place. It's interesting, Haman is a descendant of King Agag. And Haman was the right-hand man to King Xerxes. He was so honored that whenever Haman would walk in a room, everyone would have to do what? Bow. Everyone had to bow to Haman, and Haman loved it. He loved the spotlight. He loved the glory. He loved it when everyone bowed to him. But guess who didn't bow? Mordecai, Esther's cousin. Mordecai wouldn't bow. And it almost makes it sound like a personal thing, because all of Haman's buddies, all of his servants would talk to Mordecai, because Mordecai was out at the gates a lot of the time, trying to see Esther, his cousin, seeing checking on how she's doing. And the servants would say to Mordecai, you better bow. Haman's coming out, you better bow. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't bow, and he says, and he wouldn't give him honor. So that's why it sounds like it's more of it didn't say that he wouldn't bow. Remember Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego? They wouldn't bow to the golden image because they said, we'll only bow to God. This didn't sound like a spiritual thing. It didn't sound like, no, I'm a Jew and I'm obeying Mosaic law and I will not bow to anything. It sounded like it was I'm not bowing to you, you jerk. And he probably was a jerk, but I'm not bowing to you. So that was Mordecai. Haman hated Mordecai so much because he wouldn't bow down to him. Well, when he found out that Mordecai was a Jew, he said, I'm not only going to kill Mordecai, I'm killing all of his people. And Haman, again, Haman should have been wiped. Haman should never have existed if Saul was obedient to God in the first place and got rid of all the Amalekites like he was supposed to. But Haman now decided to destroy all of the Jews in Susa, all of the Jews in, was it in Susa or Persia? I think it was in Persia. Susa is a city of Persia, and when Esther asked all of her people to pray, she asked Mordecai, get all the people in Susa, all the Jews in Susa to pray for me. But he was going to wipe all the Jews out in that area. So Mordecai, again, Esther's cousin, sent word to Esther. Actually, he was just in sackcloth and ashes down at the gate, and she said, why does he look so sad? Sent her servants down to check on him. Why are you so sad? And he said, and by the way, all the servants were, well, we won't say, they were eunuchs. I won't explain what that means, but, well, that's what the Bible says over and over. So evidently it was very important. And if you don't know what that means, then you can look it up. You can Google it. Click on images. Just kidding. So Mordecai says to Esther, Haman, I wouldn't bow down to Haman. Haman's so mad at me, he wants to kill me, but now he found out I'm a Jew. And if you remember, Mordecai told Esther, don't tell anyone you're a Jew. Hide your faith. We'll talk about that. He pleaded with Esther, go to the king and beg for mercy. Beg to the king that he doesn't kill the Jews. And Esther said, I can't do that. If I go to the king, if he doesn't summon me first, and I go to the king, he could kill me. And I think this verse is at the very bottom on your study guide. I love this. Okay, at the very bottom of your study guide, on the bottom, see that in the yellow box? He said, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. I love that part. He's saying, look, God's going to hold true to his word. You can participate with him or not. You can be part of this blessing or you can miss out. But he said, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Maybe God has you in this exact time and in this exact place just to be able to stand for the Jews now and rescue them. And it says here, Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, I will go to the king, and if I perish, I perish. And she saved the Jews. And that's why in Jewish culture, she's heroic. She is definitely celebrated as a heroine. But others disagree. Listen to what one guy said about her. This is kind of like what Tony would have said about her. No, not really. Tony wasn't this harsh. This guy says, look, she grows up in a very lukewarm religious home as an orphan, raised by her cousin. Beautiful, she allows men to tend to her needs and make her decisions. Her behavior is sinful, and she spends about a year in the spa getting dolled up to lose her Virgin airline ticket with the pagan king, like hundreds of other women. I didn't say it. She performs so well that he chooses her as his favorite. Today, her story would be a young, beautiful woman living in a major city allows men to cater to her needs, undergoes lots of beauty treatments to look her best, and lands a really rich guy whom she meets on The Bachelor and wows him with an amazing night. Let's just stop it at an amazing night. Wows him with an amazing night playing cards. She's simply a person without any character until her own neck is on the line. And then we see her rise up to save the life of her people when she is converted to a real faith in God. What do you think about that? Too harsh? Listen to what somebody else said. This is the other extreme. The book of Esther contains a powerful message. Women disobeying men and saving the world. Do you think a woman wrote this or a man? Women asserting their bodily autonomy. Women who are brave and strong and active and anything but submissive. It's a message so powerful that some male Christian leaders have to undermine it because it threatens to control, it threatens the control that they have over women. What do you think about that? So what do you think? Queen Esther, heroine or harlot? But she looks so sweet. What do you think? Any thoughts? Come on, heroine. Why is she a heroine? More heroine. As long as you're more heroine than harlot, then you can kind of fool around a little bit. Just make sure you do more like good things than bad. Sue's like, heck yeah. The end justifies the means. Oh, good, Cecilia. That's on tape now. Good. Cecilia believes that the end justifies the means. So do what you have to do to get where you need to get. Jim. Heroine because she worked with God to save her people. Now, in the end, did she save the Jewish people? So none of us disagree with that. So yes, I agree with that.
She didn't know that for a long time.
But she didn't know what? That it was going to work?
She didn't know that was her purpose for a long time.
Yeah.
So,
So because she saved her people in the end, does that make the rest of it kind of forgivable? I mean, some might even say, well, God put her there, so whatever she did to get there, that was just kind of God's plan for her.
she could have said no. I mean, I understand that God put her there.
Well, we don't know if God put her there or not.
No, I'm just saying that God's will not be thwarted.
God's will not be thwarted.
But God didn't lead her into that. There was an American Idol audition, and she showed up.
Yeah. He said she could have said no.
She wasn't there to save her people. Well, she could have said no.
Okay, so let's say she was a slave. Who else do we know in the Bible that was a slave who got taken against their will? Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Joseph. Now Daniel, he was a kid, from what we know. Joseph was a kid. How was Daniel when he was enslaved? Did he do what he had to do? Did Joseph do what he had to do? Did Joseph sleep with Potiphar's wife because, that was just kind of, I'm a slave and I'm going to do what they tell me to do? He didn't. He stood up. Here's what somebody else said. This one's a little more in the middle, but he said, God uses liars like Abraham, thieves like Jacob, and sexual deviants. I cleaned that up. I cleaned that up. Sexual deviants like Judah and Samson to accomplish his will. They were. God uses these sinful people to accomplish his will. And the same is true of Esther. The book of Esther is not about a morally upright girl whom God uses because she's righteous. God used Mary because Mary was a righteous girl. He's saying God didn't use Esther that way. First, Esther does not resist being taken into Xerxes, a pagan king's harem, and participating in his beauty contest. She could have resisted. Now, some people say, well, she could have lost her life. But was Daniel prepared to lose his life? He was thrown in the lion's den. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were they prepared to lose their life? Joseph, was he prepared to lose his life? He was thrown in prison to rot. Yes. Yes. Now, we're going to talk about that. She said, I don't remember saying that Mordecai told her to go by Esther, but Mordecai did tell her, hide your faith, and it doesn't say that Mordecai put her in this position, but Mordecai didn't protect her out of the position, and she did appear to be very submissive to Mordecai. And it's right for us to be. Mordecai was her father figure. He raised her. It's right for us to be submissive to our parents. It's right for us to be submissive to our husbands. But did I hesitate? I think I just had like a mini stroke, that's all. That's still hard for me to actually get out without a little throw up coming out of my mouth. And I didn't want anyone else to know, but thank you for revealing my secret. What were we talking about? Oh, Esther was her Persian name. Hadassah was her Jewish name. She was going by Esther. She was hiding the fact, under Mordecai's direction, of the fact that she was a Jew. We're going to talk about that because I don't think she's blameless in that. She could have said no. Oh, I was reading this. First, he said she basically participated in this beauty contest. Now, could she have refused? Yes. Or Amy said, I don't think so. I've always kind of leaned towards the I don't think so. She was a Jew. She was taken. And in that culture, yeah, she could have refused. But Daniel didn't refuse to be taken as a slave. Joseph didn't refuse to be taken as a slave. Well, in the sense that, well, Daniel didn't refuse to be taken as a slave. Joseph didn't refuse to be taken as a slave. So how can we fault Esther for being taken as a slave? It wasn't her fault that she was taken as a slave to the harem. Now, we don't know. First of all, it does not say that they took these women by force. And now we'll talk about that. Cyrus, you know how I said that Babylon took over Jerusalem, exiled Jerusalem for how many years? 70 years. God, through in Jeremiah, Isaiah, said after those 70 years are over, he named the king. I will use King Cyrus. That's right. I'll use King Cyrus. King Cyrus will release you. King Cyrus wrote an edict. Is edict the right word? Wrote an edict that said, it sounds good. Wrote an edict that said, all of the Jews living in these lands, you are free to go back to your home and to build the temple of your God. Well, all the Jews from all these places, I mean, it didn't say you must go, but God wanted them to go. God released them to go build the temple and be in Jerusalem. We see that over and over and over in Scripture. Cyrus said, if there are any people in this land that would like to go home, the people who live in this land, you know, the Persians, will give you silver, they'll give you gold, they'll give you money, they'll give you food, they'll give you cattle to help you go back to your land. He was being incredibly gracious. God moved his hand, God moved his heart, but he did it. Where was Mordecai and Esther when all this happened? Yeah. Amy said, kind of like the Jews in World War II and with Nazi Germany and everything, the Jews that were in Europe because they had become wealthy, they had power, they had become established, they were comfortable. This was their home. So Esther and Mordecai, no, she was saying Persia had become their home, or Europe had become their home in World War II time, and they don't leave because, well, this is where she was raised. This is where her neighborhood friends are. This is where her school is. This is where his work is. The Lord, set it up so that they could go back to Jerusalem. I think they got comfortable in Persia. I think they got comfortable in Sodom. I think they got comfortable in a very ungodly place, and that put them in a position. Now, when they heard that the king, I'm sure this wasn't a big secret, the king was going out finding all of these young ladies, well, couldn't she have just stayed at home? Couldn't she have just watched Oprah on TV instead of walking down the street saying, I'm pretty hot, I'm pretty cute? She could have stayed home. She didn't have to be out in public and again, I don't know what was going on and how long it happened. I don't know if they went into homes. But it doesn't say that they forcibly took anybody. Yes, Tim? If he was king, they would have found her? I don't know that. This wasn't like the king who was trying to kill all the 2-year-old babies and below. He was just trying to find a hot wife. He just wanted some young lady that pleased him playing cards. He didn't want another uppity wife. He just wanted some young girl who would do whatever he wanted, basically. So I don't know what extremes he would have gone to. If they would have collected, they collected hundreds of women, but I think it was hundreds, not thousands, but hundreds of women at least, to be part of this harem. When they had enough women, they would have stopped. So, I don't know. Let me tell you what else he says. Second, Esther not only spent the night with the king before they were married, but of all the young ladies that did the same, Esther pleased him the most. Now, it sounds like she probably slept with him before they were married, right? During this 12-month, she finished the 12-month beauty treatment. And then it says when it was Esther's turn, she went to his residence. And as the custom for the women, they went in the evening and they left in the morning. I don't know that they were playing 20 questions. They could have done that in the daylight. It doesn't say. And a lot of this we're reading between the lines. And we can't put any solid, this is what it says. But it kind of looks like she did. Third, after spending the night, Esther marries Xerxes in blatant violation of Mosaic law, of Jewish law. Is that true? Was it okay for her to marry a pagan king? And we might say she had no choice. First of all, she made a lot of stupid decisions. It looks like a lot of compromising decisions, a lot of questionable decisions to be in that position in the first place. Now that she's in that position, okay, now she probably doesn't have a choice or she's going to be killed. I mean, maybe we could have changed a few choices before that. And really, if someone were to say, Tony had mentioned, if somebody were to say, Lauren, you have to go fool around and marry President Clinton, when Clinton was I was trying to think of a nice word to say womanizer, but I don't even have to marry him?
No, because the state police guys or Secret Service guys would go out into the crowd when you would say, find out her phone number.
Did you know that President Clinton, from what Tony says, and I believe him, that he would do a speech and find some young lady that pleased him, and he'd say to his Secret Service guys, go get her number. And they'd hook up, or a state policeman, and they'd hook up. Lots of them. JFK, what did they say? At least 33 women or something? I heard with JFK. People in positions of authority. Are these women forced to? What would I do if they said, you must sleep with him or we're going to kill you? Get killed! I mean, there's something worse than dying and going to paradise forever. I mean, I know it sounds awful to say, I die before it. Yes, you die, if that's what it takes. Lots of examples of people standing for biblical truth, standing for righteousness that, are killed today around the world because they won't deny Christ. Is it easier to deny Christ or to sleep with some horn dog? Ooh, am I allowed to say that in church? You guys know me. I'm so PG-13, sorry. But I mean, you don't, when people say you do what you have to do, that's a scary position to be in. Because when you do what you have to do, you make a lot of compromises, you make a lot of bad choices. You do what you have to do to follow this. And if that means dying for your faith, well, that's what it means. And we have to decide that ahead of time. We may come to a time and a place in this country where people walk in with guns and say, if you're a Christian, get out. Or if you're a Christian, stay. If you're not a Christian, get out. What are you going to do? Well, you got to do what you got to do to stay alive. Like, staying alive is the ultimate. You got to do what you got to do to take care of your family. You can't take care of your family if you're dead. You do what you got to do. We have to get rid of that mentality now. Because when we're in these compromising situations, we make decisions fast, and sometimes we make decisions stupidly because we haven't kind of settled in our heart and kind of strengthened up beforehand. Okay, he says, fourth, she wines and dines with the king. Something that it says that in this harem, that beyond the 12 months of beauty treatments, they were given special foods and wines. What did Daniel say when Daniel was given special foods? Do you remember? He said, no, I'm a Jew and I'd like to eat this Jewish food. If I get weak, then we'll do what we have to do. But test me in this and see, he told the jailer, see if I'm not stronger just eating veggies and whatever else he ate. Sticks. So she wines and dines with the king, something that Daniel and his friends explicitly chose not to do. Daniel and his friends longed for Israel, and they stuck to Mosaic Jewish law, even if it cost them their life, while Esther and her family didn't care to return to Israel or to follow Jewish law. What do you think of that? I think that's pretty accurate. That's kind of where I kind of settled with this. I think she did heroic things. Let's look at three things. Let's look at where Esther shined, where she stumbled, because we're looking at lack of Bible character, a good person who gets messed up and does a bad thing, or does a bad thing, and where we can get stronger. The whole point of doing this lack of Bible character isn't to look down our nose at these people who are far more godly probably than we'll ever be, or took far greater risks or made far greater sacrifices than we've ever done. That's not the point. The point is, see what tripped them up, because if it can trip up these godly people, it can trip us up. And I'm not saying she was godly, but she did make a big sacrifice, and she was very heroic at the end. Most of the people that we study are incredibly godly people. They just made some bad decisions, and we are learning from them so that we don't make bad decisions. I think I've told most of you that when I was a kid, I was a teenager, and my mom, like all moms, would always, you should do this, and you should do this, and you should do this. Oh, you shouldn't have done that, and you shouldn't have done that. And I said, Mom, I scared you. I have to make my own mistakes so I can learn from them. My mom hasn't, I shouldn't say that. My mom has said many wise things in her life, in case she's watching. But my mom said something that I have never, ever forgotten. She said, Lauren, wise people learn from other people's mistakes. That was so wise. We always think we have to make our own mistakes. Let me make my own mistakes and learn from them. No, just look at other people making all these stupid decisions and learn from them. That's what we're doing through this Lack of Bible Character series. Okay, so where did Esther shine? 3 things I put. Some of them are going to look a little gracious. She was willing to submit to others. That got her into a little trouble, I think. But is it a right spirit, this is hard for me, for women to have a submissive spirit? To be ooh, you guys. All of a sudden everyone went, every sphincter tightened. Sorry. Sorry. My mother also taught me to be completely independent of any man. I grew up more independent than any girl, woman. I had my best friend at the time. I was more independent than most men. I'm still more independent than most men, probably. I remember I had a friend, and I always, wanted to go to school, wanted to go to college, wanted to get my degree, wanted to do whatever. She wanted to be a housewife. That was her goal. She wanted to be a housewife. And she said she would be perfectly happy doing that. That was beyond me. Now, shoot, that's probably a smarter way to go. I have all the respect in the world for housewives. But at that point in my life, my mother had been burned enough times by men that she said, Lauren, never, ever, ever depend on a man. You always have your own career. You always have your own way of life. Every single woman is like, yes, go mama. Yes, mama. That's how I was raised. When I got saved, I was 19 years old when I got saved. And I read that, wives submit to husbands. I know. I'm starting to sweat. I read wives submit to husbands, and you know what my reaction was? It wasn't to say no. My reaction was, I'll never get married. And I had decided, I really did, when I was about 20, I got saved when I was 19. I probably tripped over that passage somewhere between 19 and 20. And that was my thought. It wasn't, forget that, forget God, forget what he said, I'll disobey his law. I thought, I will never get married. And I literally quit dating. That wasn't a big change for me. I think my eyes are bleeding, just trying to hold in all this pressure. Every sphincter on Tony just tightened up. I was a little social butterfly in high school and college. I just liked everybody, and everybody liked me, and I was just fun to be around. All of a sudden, I was just not fun. Because I didn't want to get to know anybody. I didn't want to get close to anybody. I didn't date anybody. I had the cutest guy in medical school. He was going to be a pediatrician. These are all guys that are going to be rich and everything. I didn't care about that, but he was a cutie patootie. He was cute. And he was sweet. You've heard this story, kinda. He was tall, and he had this blonde hair. And he wasn't one of those uppity kind of, I'm going to be a doctor kind. He was playful. He asked me out to, I don't remember what movie it was, but it was a G-rated movie. Now, that was adorable. I had never been asked out for, guys always ask you out for like chick flicks where people are going to make out so that you could make out whenever they make out on TV, you know? Maybe that was just me. I don't know. Tony learned so much about me during these talks. Anyway, he asked me out for a G-rated movie, and I said no. And I am so thankful that I did, because I thought, if I go out with him, I'm going to like him. And there is nothing in anything he's ever said, because we always hung out as a group. We were all medical students. We all hung out as a group. We didn't get to know each other well, but you get to know him kind of. He was a sweet, sweet, sweet guy. Never said anything about God, Jesus, church, anything like that. And I just said, no, sorry, I'm not dating right now. And that was it. And I am so thankful, because if I had gone, I probably would have liked him. And then sooner rather than later, you get your heart wrapped around him. You start making rationalizations. You say, oh, but he's so sweet. He's not saved now, but God's going to save him, because God always, he's a sweet one. God's not going to let him go to hell. God needs me in his life to save him. Make all sorts of rationalizations. So I didn't. I don't know how I got into all of that. But I was taught not to submit to men. It was finally when I met a man that I could submit to. Aww. That I finally thought, yeah, that was 2 guys before you. But it opened up my mind to other horizons, alternative lifestyles. And that would be getting married. But that saved me from a lot of really bad potential decisions. I had to, in my mind, I really had pretty much decided I'm just not going to get married, because I'm not that woman. I am not that submissive, oh, honey, whatever you say. I am just not her. I don't know where she lives or anything about her. But finally, when I met someone where I thought, well, shoot, he's following God. Of course I can follow him. He makes decisions based on what Jesus would want, and then he makes decisions based on everybody else around him before he even considers himself. Shoot, I can follow someone like that. It would be my honor to follow someone like that. And then I do. Esther, I think it was good that she had a submissive spirit. I think it was good that she was willing to follow Mordecai. I think it was good that she was willing to submit. I think it got her in tons of trouble. You have to be careful who you are submissive to. Are women supposed to be submissive to men? This isn't a trick question. If they're married, what other men are in here? Raise your hand. All the men in here, raise your hand. I am not submissive to you. You are not my boss. We are not called to be submissive to men. We're called to be submissive to our husbands. So women, don't get married or be extra careful. Really, because that's kind of how it works. We have to be careful who we're submissive to. We shouldn't have such a submissive spirit that we're wet rags, that we let people walk all over us and we say, oh, but we're supposed to be submissive. Now, let's say Tony were to say, look, I really want this job. They're going to interview you because I really want this job. So tell them that we lived in Calcutta and we took care of these orphan kids and then we blah, 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 whatever. Now, I'm supposed to submit to my husband, right? So what am I supposed to do? Are we supposed to lie for our husbands? No. Follow God first, others next. Jesus, others yourself. And if your husband tells you to do something that's ungodly, unbiblical, don't do it. So many women get into so much trouble because they're following these idiot guys. And guys do stupid things because they're following us demon-possessed women. Women are of the devil, man. When will you learn? They are. Women are of the devil. Men are stupid, but women are evil. It's good to have a submissive spirit, but you have to know where to draw the line. You have to know when to be submissive and who to be submissive to. We're supposed to be submissive to our parents. So should she have obeyed Mordecai in general? Should she have been submissive to Mordecai in general? Yes. But when he said, now he said, hide the fact that you're a Jew. By the way, when they said, all you women, we're going to pick you to be an American Idol or The Bachelor for King Xerxes, if she would have said, I'm a Jew, she probably just would have been dismissed. They would have said, oh, sorry, we're not looking for your kind. She probably just would have been dismissed. That would have been a smart thing to do, potentially. They weren't killing Jews. It was comfortable there for Jews. That's why they were still there. So if she just wouldn't have hid it, I kind of think Mordecai was trying to put her in a position, try to get her. I mean, she could be the queen. Are you kidding me? Be careful. We're supposed to be submissive, but when they're putting us in compromising situations, we're not supposed to be submissive anymore. She was willing to submit to some. She was willing to stand up to others. At the end, what ended up happening? She basically went to battle for the Jews, told the king, she wined and dined him several times, told the king what Haman was trying to do to her people and admitted then that she was a Jew. And he said, I didn't know this. And she rescued the Jews. She was willing to stand up ultimately, and if she was willing to stand up then, she could have stood up to Mordecai before. Anyway, this is where she shined, and I keep talking about her bad. She was willing to submit to others. It's a good thing to have a submissive spirit, to at least not be all uppity, like I used to think Vashti was. Now I think she was just strong. Number 2, she stood up to others. And number 3, she sacrificed for others. She was literally willing to lay down her life for her people. She was willing to lay down her life for her people, and that was huge. Okay, where I think Esther may have stumbled. She didn't appear to resist compromising pressures. Again, they were in Persia. That might have been Mordecai's fault. We don't know. But Esther could have said, cousin, God really wants us to go back to Israel. Can we please go? I feel like I want to be obedient to God, and I know your career is here, and I know my school is here, and I know all of our friends and our house is here, but I think we ought to consider going back to Israel and working to build the temple of God. She could have. Again, she was willing to stand up to Haman at the end. She could have stood up to Mordecai. Again, a lot of this is reading between the lines. She didn't appear to resist compromising pressures. Maybe it was her age. She was probably a teenager. But again, she was old enough to become a wife. She was old enough to stand up ultimately. She could have resisted the beauty contest. She could have stayed home. She could have, like I said, just stayed home and watched Oprah. She could have been grocery shopping the whole day and stayed inside. I don't know. But she didn't have to necessarily be out there. She could have just said, I'm a Jew. There are so many different ways I think she could have gotten out of this situation in the first place. She didn't appear to resist compromising pressures. Number 2, she didn't appear to refuse corrupt positions. It looks like she slept with King Xerxes, period, before they were married. Then she married the pagan king. I mean, those are 2 huge no-nos. Guys, those are 2 huge no-nos. And the food, she didn't obey Mosaic law. She didn't seem like she really cared that much about it. So those were her corrupt positions. Okay, where can we get stronger? Protect your loved ones from compromising positions. Mordecai, I think, was equally, if not more, or at least implicated. I can't say fault, because again, we're reading between the lines. But if the story of Esther appears as it seems, I think Mordecai could have positioned her, could have protected her better. He could have said, Esther, I know all your friends are here, but we're going to go to Israel because that's where God wants us. Oh, but Mordecai, your business is here. God is more important than our business. God will protect us. God will see us through. That's where we should be. Mordecai was the man of the house. Mordecai was the father figure. Mordecai should have protected her. This may mean encouraging your kiddos or whoever's in your influence to let go of opportunities. I think Mordecai saw a great opportunity for Esther, this poor little orphan Jewish girl. She could be queen of Persia. That was huge. You think any daddy wants their daughter to achieve, to be great things, to be great in the eyes of the world, to have a secure position? Shoot, she could have signed up for the thing just to get the 12 months of beauty treatments. Who knows? They were probably poor. They probably never had much of anything. And I think Mordecai saw a great opportunity for Esther and said, Esther, don't say you're a Jew. Protect your loved ones from compromising positions. There was a guy who used to come to our church who his daughter was into drama. And we went to go see one of the plays once, and it was just a high school play. But she kissed a dude at the end. was just a play. She was an actress. That's what she was supposed to do. You do what you're supposed to do. But should you be kissing dudes just because your director says, hey, go kiss that dude? Okay, well, now if he says, okay, put your hand on his leg and just rub it really gently. Now, is that okay? Okay, now he says, okay, just lift up your shirt just a little bit. Okay, pull it down just a little bit. Okay, wiggle this way just a little. Where do you draw the line? Tony, okay, where do you draw the line? And Tony actually talked to him and said, hey, dude, just be careful. That's all I'm saying. Just be careful. I mean, because if a director tells her to kiss a dude and she does it, well, you want her to further her career as an actress. Well, what does that mean? What if they tell her next time to take off her shirt? What if they tell her next time to, say something, use a bad word that well, but it's just part of acting. That's what you have to do, that you do what you have to do to be an actress. That's what you have to do. And they ended up leaving the church because they didn't appreciate his godly counsel. You don't do what you have to do to succeed in this world. You do what you have to do to succeed with God. You know what I mean? Don't put your family in compromising situations, regardless of how successful you think it may make them. Number two, it may mean encouraging them to let go of relationships. If your kid is dating someone that they shouldn't date, it's up to you. I mean, you can't control your kids. None of us can control our kids, but it's up to you to say, careful. I mean, God says not to be yoked together with unbelievers. You're going to get your heart wrapped around that person, and then that's going to put you in more compromising situations. We need to protect our loved ones from these compromising positions. Teach them to stand. Number two, protect yourself from compromising positions. This may mean letting go of opportunities for yourself. It may mean that you don't get that great job. It may mean that you don't get that raise. It may mean that you have to move because you can't keep your position here. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Don't put yourself in compromising situations. Don't hide your faith. Don't compromise your faith. Don't water down your faith because it's going to put you in a better position here. It may mean that you let go of relationships. Don't get together with people. I mean, if you find someone attractive and you're not married, or if you're married, you find somebody attractive and you find yourself kind of joking around with them, kind of flirty, kind of whatever, get out, separate yourself, do whatever you have to do. Leave jobs if necessary, if you can't control it. If you find yourself becoming emotionally involved in someone that you shouldn't get emotionally involved in, leave your job. Oh, I can't, I need my money. You need your integrity. You need to protect yourself from any kind of compromising position. So determine to stand. Did I overstate that? Are you okay with that? Okay. Number three, protect your faith. I know there's no clock on here anymore, so I can talk forever. I have a little clock down here, and it's 7:21. I have 9 minutes, and I'm going to get you out early. So don't worry, Miss Rita. Protect your faith and testimony from Rita. She's so cute. If I start going too long, she just stands up, all cute. It's like, oh, Rita's stretching. Oh, no, she's hurrying me up. Okay, Rita. Protect your faith and your testimony from compromising positions. Remember when they were trying to catch Daniel? Again, Daniel, I think, is just a good comparison because he was taken as a teenager, as a slave, the same way. And he used to pray 3 times a day. Do you remember? Morning, afternoon, and night, not bowing down to Mecca or anything like that. But, I think he actually did bow to Jerusalem or bow towards Jerusalem. And his window was open when he would pray. They were trying to catch Daniel doing something wrong. Could they catch Daniel doing anything wrong? What unimaginable integrity. Imagine if someone were sent into your life for the specific purpose of finding you doing anything wrong. Could they find it? Yeah, they could. They couldn't find anything that Daniel was doing wrong. But they saw that he was praying, so they decided, okay, that's not wrong, but we'll make that wrong. Oh, great King Nebuchadnezzar, greatest king of all, everyone should only bow to you and to pray to you or something, but at least bow to you. Let it be a law that nobody, what was it? Because I don't want to get them confused with the golden image, about bowing to the golden image, but basically, no one can pray to any other god but you. Something like that. And now, do we have to kneel to pray? Do we have to pray with our window open? Do we have to pray publicly? La la. I think that was a prayer. It was a melodic prayer. Do we have to pray in front of people openly? Could Daniel have continued to pray to God just as effectively without, hiding it, but without being obvious to people? Yes. Why didn't he? Was he showing off? Was he saying, look at me? It was his habit. It was his testimony. It was saying, I am who I am, and I serve my God, and no one is going to change that. That was bold. And he got huge punished for it. Is that when he got thrown in the lion's den? I think that's when he got thrown in the lion's den, because he refused to change his faith. He refused to change his testimony, even though he could have without sinning, I think. I think he could have said, okay, I'll just pray to myself. You can't keep me from praying. I'm going to pray to my God. I just want to open my window open. That's probably what I would have done. But it was so important to him for everybody else to see, I am a man of integrity, and I'm going to serve my God, and no one's going to stop me. Protect your testimony from compromising positions. Imagine if someone were watching you all the time and could see what you do wrong. But God can. God sees what we do wrong. And other people, our kids, they see. They know. They'll do the same things. We don't even think, it's almost like we think kids are deaf, or we think kids are dumb. We do things and then they'll say something the following week and it's like, where did you get that? Well, you just said that last week, stupid woman. You think I'm deaf? You told that other, when you call and they say, tell them I'm not home. Well, whoever is saying to the kid, tell them I'm not home, that kid's learning it's okay to lie. It's okay to lie for really stupid reasons. Don't lie. Let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. Be a person of integrity. Don't compromise. Don't protect your faith and protect your testimony from compromising positions. Show them, meaning everyone who's watching you, that you stand. Compromising positions can easily become corrupt positions. Don't you think? When you start to compromise just a little, and it doesn't seem bad, just a little. And then it's so much easier to do it just a little more. Well, it's not much different than what I've already been doing. Oh, well, that's not really bad. There's no thou shalt not. And you do just a little more, and then all of a sudden, you fall from compromised into corrupt. And I think that's what happened with Esther. Esther, I think, got herself into compromising positions. Mordecai allowed her, if not encouraged her, to get into these compromising positions, and that put her in a position where, okay, now she's in these corrupt positions. Now she's sleeping with this king before she's married. Now she's marrying this pagan king. She's disobeying all of her Jewish law. She's doing all of these things, and no, the end does not justify the means. Meh. I know, you're only kidding. So protect yourself, protect your loved ones from compromising positions. It doesn't happen suddenly. What does Tony always say? You're not going to fall into the creek if you're not walking on the edge of the bank. If your mama tells you not to get in the creek or play in the creek, go far away and protect yourself so that you don't get into those positions. So I think Esther did, I think she was kind of, I don't want to say harlot because I don't think she got paid. I don't think she was a harlot. I think she was just kind of a weak woman who had compromised. I think she got comfortable in her culture in Persia, and I think she had already made enough compromises that it was not that difficult to make a few more compromises for this position or for this opportunity. I don't know. But I think she grew into a true heroine. I think she grew into a person of character, a person of strength. We trust a person of God. We don't know. But I think she at least grew into a person of character, a person of strength, a person of integrity. So I think that she started out being the person that Tony usually sees her as being, where I talk about Esther being this great woman and he rolls his eyes. I think she kind of started out not as great as I always saw her as being, and I think she became the person that I see her now, being a great person of character and strength. So, cool? All right, let's pray. Lord Jesus, once again, thank you for your word. Thank you for the examples that you've given us so that we can learn from them, so that we don't make the same mistakes or put ourselves in the same compromising positions. God, help us protect the people around us, the people that we influence. Help us protect them from being in these compromising positions. Help us be good examples to them so that they can see that we don't put ourselves in these compromising positions. God, help everybody in our lives see that we want to serve you no matter what. And we're willing to make any sacrifice necessary just to honor you, just to please you with our life. God, we love you. We hope we can become even more godly and people of integrity and people of character, so that we can really truly shine your light, so that people can see you living through us, so that they could see that they could have that same relationship with you that we do. We love you. We praise you. Thank you for these people. Thank you for this church. God, help us honor you and please you more and more every day. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.